So good morning. Welcome to the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar. We are currently at Wednesday, August 16th, 2023, and my name is Natalie. I'll be your moderator today for the webinar. I'm going to share my screen here and we'll showcase the community of Mankato today in South Central Minnesota on our webinar. So the speakers today are Mark Plotz and Cindy Winters, and we'll get into more details about them in just a moment. To get us started this morning, we'd like to have you put your name and location in the chat box. And here's the question for today. What common household items is the Mankato public art piece, Fine Feathered Friends, largely made with? So I'll wait one moment here just to have you put your name in the chat and answer the question before I go to the next slide and reveal our answer to the question. So we have forks and spoons. So let's see if we have any winners. So very good. This was a great question, and it was a colorful example of some public art in Mankato. So thanks for sharing that with us. So welcome to the webinar. We have folks from across the state. We have Wabasha, Fergus Falls, Detroit Lakes, St. Peter, Minneapolis, and some other places throughout the state. So welcome to the webinar today. The purpose of the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar is to connect local bike walk leaders to share stories and ideas about how they're lifting up the walking and biking culture in their communities. BikeMN has a land acknowledgement statement, and I'll go ahead and read that. We want to acknowledge that Minnesota is the ancestral land of the several indigenous groups, including the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Cheyenne, Oto, Iowa, and Meskwaki people. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We affirm the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities. Despite centuries of colonial violence, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Indigenous peoples are still here demonstrating innumerable talents and gifts in the midst of continued oppression. They must be celebrated and uplifted. So there's a link at the bottom of this screen, and Mel, if you want to pop that into the chat box, you can click on this and see what Indigenous land you're located on, where you live and where you work, as some helpful information as you to guide you through this work. So I have a couple slides up here that are MnDOT slides. This is something that you might have seen in the July presentation from Kelly Corbin. I just want to pop this back up on the screen here to remind folks that the Active Transportation Advisory Committee opportunity is still open, and you're welcome to go online to apply for these positions. The committee consists of 29 members serving 4-year terms. So you can go online and get this information that is located on the Secretary of State's website. This is the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. There's also another opportunity that just popped up. That's the Advisory Council on Traffic Safety. So there are 2 positions for individuals representing vulnerable road users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and other operators of personal conveyance. So this is again on the Minnesota Secretary of State's website. If you're interested, go ahead and go online there and apply for that. The Minnesota Safe Routes to School Network also meets on a monthly basis. They have upcoming webinars on Thursday, September 7th at 10 a.m. about Crossing Guard and Student Patrol Overview, and on October 5th and November 2nd, they also will be having webinars. So reach out to Julie J at movemn.org if you'd like more information about the Safe Routes to School Network. So today I want to welcome our speakers, and we're going to kick things off with Mark Plotz, and we welcome him to the webinar today. He may be someone that you've heard of. He spoke at Walk Bike Places. Some folks here have probably attended that conference, and now joins us today to talk about the Active Transportation Summit in Southern Minnesota. Welcome to the webinar, Mark.
Hey, Natalie. Good to be here. Thanks for the invitation. All right, why don't we go to the next slide? So I own a bike shop. It's in St. Peter, Minnesota. We moved down here in 2021. The shop had previously been in St. Paul. This is a second career for me, but due to the enlightened self-interest of owning a bike shop, I've never quite left my former career of being a transportation planner. The first couple of years when we were in St. Paul, I got my feet on the ground and learned a new business, and then pretty quickly dove into reaching out to my local elected officials and having conversations with customers about what it's like to walk and bike in downtown St. Paul. It was pretty basic stuff like speeding traffic and lack of trash cans, and let's mark some more crosswalks and let's make the walk signal a little bit longer. And then I found my local advocacy organization, the St. Paul Bicycle Coalition, which is really, really great work. The first thing I talked to them about was bike theft, because that was the thing that our customers are most concerned about. So I began working with them a little bit, but with the walkability stuff and the missing infrastructure pieces and the bike theft, it wasn't the stuff that I thought about in my quiet moments when I'm walking my dog, because I was always sure that somebody else was also doing the work, and I met a lot of them. I hardly thought about MnDOT at all, but all that changed when I moved to St. Peter, and we had twins, and I was the only employee of the bike shop, and my wife is also self-employed, so we needed to be closer to family if we wanted to continue making our livelihood like that. So we bought a building in downtown St. Peter on Main Street, which is also called Trunk Highway 169. And it wasn't long before we really started talking about things like traffic calming and having conversation with our city council members about, what can we do to this street to help revive our retail economy. And it just so happened that one day, Kristen, who's our local ship coordinator, happened into the shop right around the time we were doing a youth bike rodeo and some helmet fitting at the local hospital. And we began talking about, well, what do you think about St. Peter applying for the Bicycle Friendly Communities program? From there, I got hooked up with her community leadership team at SHIP. And I started to hear stories about other communities in southern Minnesota and in our MnDOT district, which is District 7. Speeding, speed limits, they were all concerns that other communities were having. And so once I got connected with Cindy, and we sort of formed together like Voltron with their super advocacy, we decided that rather than having these fights project by project, maybe we need to back up and start talking about some regional solutions and some more engagement with MnDOT. Natalie referenced the Walk Bike Places conference, and I was the director of that from 2011 to 2019 when I was living out on the East Coast. And I was always proud to be a Minnesotan when I was directing that conference, because Minnesota always sent either the biggest delegation in absolute numbers or the biggest delegation by capita. And so I was really surprised once I got out of the metro area to see what I saw as some backsliding. The latest, the latest guidance on bicycle and pedestrian safety and facility design weren't necessarily being followed. And, a lot of times the people that I've talked to didn't feel heard about their concerns with traffic calming and just the overall effect that having a state highway as our main street was having on our economic environment. So we decided, Cindy, Kristen, and a few other people decided to hold this active transportation summit. And so that's what we've got happening at the end of September 29th, which is a Friday. Why don't we go to the next slide here? And just as sort of the nudge that I needed in this direction, I looked at all the capital highway investment plans that have been submitted by the various districts from 2023 through 2032. MnDOT has made it very easy to compare across districts. And so District 1 is just doing an amazing job with overall the amount of investment that they're making and also the number of projects that benefit walkers and pedestrians. When I see numbers like this, I see an RDC and an MPO and a district that is really taking complete streets seriously. You know, they're not just counting ADA improvements that they're making in the district, but they're actually thinking about complete streets in their long range planning. And I just haven't seen the evidence of that in our district. So just, you know, one more reason to have this summit at the end of September. So let's go to the next slide here. And so we've got registration open right now. It's a one-day summit plus. The first day is going to be split into the morning roundtable where we're all together and we're talking about the demographic case for investing in active transportation. That's, you know, basically if our region wants to compete with other parts of the country, what sort of investments do we need to make sure that, you know, we're making it easy for employers to attract qualified workers to our region. And then the second roundtable is going to be about the economic case for investing in active transportation. So tourism, individual health, social capital, social cohesion, those kinds of things. So it's $25 to attend. Presenters are free. And that is the link to the registration page at the bottom of the slide here. Let's go to the next one here. And so just real briefly, this is the lineup of the summit. And maybe right now, Natalie, I want to take a break for some questions that you might have.
Sure, thanks, Mark. So this is really great information, and I know we have at least one MnDOT person on the phone and some folks from Southern Minnesota, and I think it's great that you're presenting this information and inviting folks to this Southern Minnesota Active Transportation Summit here on Friday, September 29th. So so this is great. So maybe I'll just pause for a moment here, and folks that are in the room, if you would like to raise your hand and share if you are planning to attend the summit, and just let's see if anyone's interested or is speaking at the summit or has some connection with this summit. To see if we have some folks in the room here that are going to be at that. So good, I see at least one thumbs up here in the group, a couple of thumbs up. So Josh and Kristen, these are folks that you probably know Mark. So, well, so you shared a nice little introduction here. Is there any questions that folks that people are? Oh, how can you get invited and get to the link to this? Okay, let's see here. The active transfer, you had the link in the other screen.
Yep,
right?
the link is on the previous one. So that's an active link.
Okay, there was a question about that. And so if we can get the link into the chat box here, that would be great. And then we'll get that. Oh, here we go. So thanks, Mel. You put it in the chat box so people can register there and get connected. So, all right. So just a question, you shared a lot of different components to, you know, the transportation piece and how that's working or not working in South Central Minnesota, in particular in the places that you lived. What is something that you would like to ask this group that might be helpful for you to know for the work that you're doing in St. Peter?
Well, I'm just curious about, you know, I used to be a transportation planner. And when I see our MPO publishing its transportation improvement plan, where, you know, it's 70 pages and like 4 of those are actual like a spreadsheet with some descriptions of the project. And, you know, we have open houses about the transportation improvement plan, and like 7 people show up and everyone's excited because like that's a record. You know, like it seems to me like we need to be thinking differently about engaging people in transportation planning. Like it's cool when a single project is happening and like the bulldozer shows up and then like everybody suddenly pays attention about what's happening. But longer term, like when you're looking at the 4-year plan or the 10-year plan, like it doesn't seem to me like there's just a lot of engagement. And so I'm just wondering, like, realistically, what is our expectation about public engagement on this. Like when I looked at the rest of Minnesota, like I don't worry about the metro area. Like you got good MPOs there. You got good county transportation departments. You got good planners. You got people who are going to conferences that are following the best guidance. You probably got more people involved in that Summit Avenue project than are involved in the rest of the state on transportation advocacy. So, you know, I'm wondering, like, how do we get more people engaged on transportation? Like it seems like we're 10 years behind the other places where I've lived, at least when it comes to talking about active transportation and ADA and, you know, like that kind of stuff. And I think part of that is, you know, we haven't been listening to people, but we also haven't been giving them the right way to get engaged. I just, you know, I kind of scratch my head on this.
So maybe we have folks that are on the call today that are part of a local advocacy committee for biking and walking, or a Safe Routes to School committee. Folks that are part of Safe Routes to School, do you have any comments that you'd like to share? I know we have some public health folks here, and that's a lot of the time some of the ways that, Mark, that folks get plugged into this transportation work here in Minnesota. There's a real strong connection with local public health and to address those concerns across Minnesota. So if there's any public health folks here that would like to share, if you're part of a local advocacy committee or a Safe Routes to School committee, what's something that maybe would be helpful for the statewide group of leaders that are on the call or might listen to the replay to hear that can speak to what Mark's talking about? How do you get people engaged? What speaks to you from your region of the state? So I put everyone on the spot. Sorry about that.
You know, and it's a bit of a rhetorical question too. So, you know, yes, it is putting everybody on the spot, but it's also a question that I want to dangle.
Okay, we have Mary Safkin from MnDOT and also Joanne Judge Dietz from Rochester who have raised their hand. So wonderful. We'll go to Mary first and then to you, Joanne.
So I'm in District 4, and we have a pretty strong relationship with our SHIP, especially Patrick Hollister with Partnership for Health. And I guess while we, you know, it is project driven, but we are looking at more standalone projects. But, you know, we work with Patrick to look at our projects that are way out in the 10-year. And then he is dedicated though, which I've found in like other SHIP coordinators, his title is active transportation. He is dedicated to that. That's his focus. Whereas I know in other SHIP coordinators, they have other duties or things that they're responsible for. But we work with him, and then he's able to bring money to the locals to develop plans ahead of time for what the biking and pedestrian needs are. And then we fold that in, and he works with them to seek like active transportation dollars or TAP dollars. So, you know, I think it's just working with different groups. Mallory's on this call with WCI. We work a lot with our RDOs. They also support us. And so I think, and I guess I had a question about the map with the dollars, because we leverage a lot of dollars that are not MnDOT dollars, that are being brought to our program from, you know, they're coming, like I mentioned, like the TA dollars, the TAP dollars, Safer Routes to School dollars, active transportation. So I don't know if this is strictly like MnDOT dollars being spent.
It was it was in the intro of the CHIP plan for your district. So that's
okay.
Yeah.
And that's probably identified just state dollars. You know, so we're leveraging other dollars that other locals are bringing. Because we've had quite a few complete streets projects, you know, so that's probably not the full picture of funding that's being spent. Maybe MnDOT, but there's other funding that's being brought to the table for that. So
Yeah, and that's a good point, and and that has been one of the challenges that I've seen is how do you actually track transportation alternative projects across the state? And I got in touch with MnDOT and I got the full 4-year from all across the state, and I did some tabulation that way, but it's a challenge. The data are hard to get. And there's not a lot of transparency with MnDOT and understanding how much money is being spent, how many projects actually include complete streets elements. And so, you know, that is something that I think it's a concern that I'd like to see some of the state level advocacy organizations take up.
well, and I have to be honest, it's a challenge, you know, for, you know, in planning I have a bike head coordinator, so we're the ones that are advocating within our district for that, and it also is, I mean, we have to advocate, you know, with my peers here at the district, because I'm competing against pavement that's falling apart or bridges that need fixing or whatever.
And that is not a unique story. One of the things, and I suspected that SHIP is probably our best developed statewide network for talking about these concerns, transportation, planning, health, land use, that kind of stuff. District 1 is doing extremely well. And one of the things, and I've talked to some of the people up there, so that's the Arrowhead, and they've got somebody from SHIP who is on their area transportation partnerships technical committee that looks at applications for TAP projects. And so, you know, I wish that practice was more widespread, but our districts seem to have a high degree of autonomy. I hate to cut this conversation short, Natalie, but my wife is about to leave, and so I need to transition to stay-at-home dad mode.
Okay, wonderful. And we do have a question from Joanne. I don't know if you want to sneak one quick one in, but we'll get it to you and have a response back to Joanne if you know, if we're transitioning off here. So thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for taking the time this morning and joining our call.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Have a great day, Mark. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, folks. Joanne, I'm going to hold the space for your question here so that we can capture that, and maybe the group might discuss it a little bit. And in just a moment, I'll introduce our second speaker and start sharing my screen again. So, Joanne, do you want to ask your question, and we can maybe chat a little bit about it?
Well, I didn't really have a question. I was just going to say I would just give a shout out to some of our partners that really have done a lot of work in trying to increase the interest in biking, and that's We Bike Rochester, which is a branch of BikeMN. So in order to get more people really to care, I think they've just done such a good job of having regular bike rides 3 times a week, different times for every level. And I think that's really opened some eyes. In fact, just last week, they did an invite to Senator Carla Nelson to go on a ride to show kind of the good, bad, and the ugly. We have had some wonderful transportation infrastructure projects in the corridor of Rochester. And so to do a comparison between that, riding in really great infrastructure and then riding where there isn't any, I think really opened her eyes. In fact, by the end of the ride, I think she probably went straight to buy an e-bike. So that I think was really effective. We also invited all of our city council members, and none of them showed up because, of course, Michael Wojcik, who's on the call here, used to be on our city council and isn't anymore. He would have been there. So I think that has been really helpful in bringing the leaders, the decision makers to the table to kind of show what can be done and what we need to do, and kind of looking at that, it was helpful to see the numbers of dollars that are spent around the state and think, wow, how could we use some of those dollars locally, and do a better job of finding projects, planning projects ahead of time. So
thanks, Joanne. Thanks for bringing those things forward. And so we'll be introducing Michael in just a little bit with some more depth in introduction. However, I'll pause for just a moment here. We're going to introduce and welcome our second speaker. I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing again so we can put up the slides. So the second speaker today is Cindy Winters. Many of you may already know Cindy. She comes to us as a board member from BikeMN and the chair of the Advocacy Committee, as well as a local leader in Mankato with their local group. Welcome to the webinar, Cindy.
Thanks, Natalie, and thanks for inviting me to attend. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Greater Mankato Walk Bike Advocacy Group, and I really want to promote the Mankato River Ramble, a ride that's coming up. So can you go to the next slide, please? So the 13th annual Mankato River Ride is October the 8th. It's on a Sunday, and it's a fundraiser for Gumboa and BikeMN. We offer 4 different routes. We have an 8-mile child's route this time, which is being led by one of our advocacy members. This is the first time for this shorter route. We have a 12-mile loop, a 29-mile loop, and a 42-mile loop. And it attracts on average about 1,500 people over that come to Mankato to participate in the ride. So I really encourage you to think about attending and participating in the ride. Early registration, discount registration ends on the 18th. So you've got time to register at a discount. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the Ramble takes you through a majority of it, depending on which route you take. The 12 and the 29-mile route uses a lot of the trail system in town, and we ride through the river valley, and it's absolutely gorgeous in the fall with the leaves changing, and it attracts enough people that really support the local businesses in Mankato and North Mankato, and as well as some of the nonprofits in town. And so we do use that money to support nonprofits that provide opportunities for children and residents to get outside and be physically active. And I'm going to talk about that as well. So that QR code right there, if you click on it, it'll take you to the registration page. And early registration, like I said, ends on the 18th. So if you go to the next slide, please. I think advocacy is really important. And I think advocacy really starts with working with a lot of different organizations, nonprofits throughout the community. So what we do with the money that we raise through the River Ramble is we provide small grants. These are not huge amounts of money, but we provide them to small local organizations that then provide opportunities for individuals to get outside and be physically active, because we know that there's a lot of different kinds of biking and people are attracted to all different levels of bicycling. So the first one that we did is Smiles is our independent living center that works with people with disabilities, and they are starting an adaptive bicycle program. So we provided them with some grant money to purchase an e-trike so that they can participate in some of the River Ramble rides. And then they also use the e-trike for the North Mankato Fun Days Parade. So they're really excited about that opportunity. They had an expo, an e-bike or adaptive bike expo in, I think it was the end of April, where they brought a variety of different bikes in and let people try them out so that they had a better idea of what kind of bikes they would need to purchase for their adaptive bike program, but also what bikes were available for residents in the community that maybe needed an e-bike. And then we provide funds to the Key City Bike Shop, which is a nonprofit donation center where they collect used bikes they will either part them out and recycle them, or they'll work to repair them, and then they sell them at a discount. Or if you happen to be low income and you need a bike, you can come in and work on a bike and earn a bike and put it together. So we always support the work that Key City Bike does, because they fit a different need in the community than what we as the advocates do. So if you go to the next slide. And then we also provide some funding to the interscholastic Mankato Cycling Club here in town, so the mountain biking club. And that money is used to help train the coaches, help cover background checks, first aid training. And then some of the money is also used to purchase bikes for kids that don't have the ability to buy their own bikes. And this is a great program to help introduce kids to biking and help them develop some bicycle handling skills as well. And if you ever come to Mankato and check out Mount Cato, some of the tournaments or races are held at Mount Cato, and it's just so fun to see all the bikes all over that mountain, and kids just having a great time doing mountain biking through there. And then a new group that just started in St. Peter is the Grass and Roots Outdoors program. And that program works with kids, all kinds of kids in the community of St. Peter, to get them outside and be physically active, and to teach them about nature. But in particular, they asked us for some grant money so that they can work with the Smallest community in St. Peter to help them learn how to ride and develop riding safety skills. So, and if their parents don't have bikes, they also teach their parents how to ride, so that they can be safe and ride with their kids. And then they work on finding bikes for their own personal use as well, to help maintain that skill over time. Next slide, Natalie. And then, because I am on the advocacy committee for both organizations and on the board, this is my favorite, one of my favorite topics motivational sayings is, don't judge each day by the harvest that you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. Advocacy is hard work and it takes time. And I like to think of advocacy as the opportunity to plant a seed in every conversation that I have with someone, so that, because you never know when that idea is going to come back to you, like, oh, we should be trying this. And a perfect example of that is I used to work in New Ulm as an advocate, and we had talked about implementing, I just threw this idea out there, of reverse angle parking on Main Street. And most people really laughed at me, and I talked to the city police chief about it, and he didn't really have views either way. And about 3 months later, I heard him talking to other people that maybe we should look into implementing that. And I'm like, wow, I never thought that would come back and to me and come out of his mouth, that he would supportive of that. So don't hesitate to plant those seeds whenever you can. And so let's talk about advocacy. Let's talk about the needs across Greater Minnesota. Because I'm on the advocacy committee at BikeMN, I would love to have more Greater Minnesota representation across the state as a member of the advocacy group. If you're interested, you can contact anyone at BikeMN and let them know, and they'll get your name to me, and we can start working on our legislative agenda. And talking about legislation, it's my great honor to be able to introduce our new executive director to BikeMN. So Michael Wolchek is on the call. He's I'm sorry, I moved you, Michael. He's from Rochester and did serve on the city council in Rochester. So he's got a lot of great local advocacy experience. So welcome, Michael, and please, let's talk about legislation and advocacy.
I know that my advocacy chair loves it when we talk about advocacy, so we'll definitely drop in a little bit of advocacy here. I'm just going to give you a very brief introduction about myself this month, and then next month I think we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth. But I would absolutely echo Cindy's call that part of the power of BikeMN and other statewide organizations are our ability to bring resources that are sometimes sparse in different areas on their own together as a team to really impact the entire state. And you know, if you're interested in being a part of that, particularly in Greater Minnesota, we at BikeMN are definitely going to have a focus on Greater Minnesota. Please contact me or other members of the team, and we will figure out how to use your skills effectively. So if you're banging your head against the wall and you feel you're all alone, come work with our team, and we will figure out how to empower you to do more than maybe what you thought was possible. I did put in the chat my email address. It's real easy. It's michael@bikemn.org. As Cindy mentioned, I actually served for 12 years on the City of Rochester Council. That was an experience, I guess you could say. And but we did do a lot of tremendous advocacy, infrastructure, and planning for bike infrastructure in the City of Rochester. And it's been a real pleasure to see some of that come to fruition. Those of you in the bike, walk, roll communities are always welcome to contact me if you're in Rochester, because I certainly love to show off our community. One thing that I just wanted to highlight this month, and maybe one of my teammates, Angela or Mel, can post this, but for those of you that are not aware, and I'm trying to tell every group this right now, legislation this recent session now has it as a mandate that safe biking and walking is taught in the first 3 weeks of school for the K-8 levels. And again, that's one of the things that came out of our awesome advocacy committee led by Cindy. And what we'll do is we knew that this is going to be a scramble for a lot of folks to figure out how to get this education in place. Some schools are already doing it, some are not. Obviously, keeping our kids safe is a huge priority for all of us. So what we wanted to do is set perfection aside and just create a landing page where anyone who had questions about the law or were looking for materials that would comply with the requirements of the law could find what's available. So we don't expect that this is the final version of the site, but the link that my teammates are sharing, you can share that link with anyone in the school districts that might be interested, and they can find what the law requires and a whole bunch of resources to come in compliance with the law. And ultimately, this is about safety of children, which is something that I focused on a lot in my previous career and will here at BikeMN as well. If you have any questions or suggestions, this is something that my team is going to continue to work on. So I do appreciate that feedback. I don't want to bore you because I'm going to do that next month.
Michael, we greatly appreciate your introduction here and the context for welcoming you here to BikeMN. Thank you so much for sharing that educational piece. And I know that's with back to school, this is definitely relevant, and the timely nature of this information is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much. One comment I want to make just to connect this with something that had been shared previously in this webinar today was about the bicycle-friendly community opportunity. When the League of American Bicyclists looks at your community to determine whether you're bicycle-friendly to receive an award and at what level, they will look at that education piece pretty strongly. And BikeMN has a lot of these tools to help you get into compliance with these new rules, and then also to really grow that bike education program. So definitely reach out. Michael's email is in the chat box there, and other information in addition to Angela. She shared her email as well as the education director. So I want to go back to Cindy here for a moment and hold some space to open it up for question and answers for Cindy about Mankato, the Mankato River Ramble, the advocacy work that's being done locally in that region of the state, since we're shining the spotlight on Mankato and that south central part of our state today. Is there anyone that's on the webinar that would like to ask Cindy a question about what she shared or something else that came up as you were hearing Michael speak? Everyone is on mute for your, on the Zoom call here. So you would need to unmute if you'd like to unmute and ask your question. Otherwise, feel free to type it in the chat box as well. I do see a comment in here, and this was kind of, I think, during the time that you were chatting a little bit, Mary from MnDOT, just about our request for MnDOT to share some of these local events pieces, like, for example, the Southern Minnesota Active Transportation Summit. So request just to kind of get some cross promotion on some of these pieces. So thanks for that suggestion, Tina. Was there any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask Tina, either to Cindy or to Mary or other folks?
Not really. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem. It's great to hear another voice on the call here, and I appreciate the comments, and just wanted to make sure that I recognize that as we're looking at strengthening the statewide representation for biking and walking and rolling all across Minnesota, and that this group that meets during these webinars helps to share strategies to help further advance those goals. So thank you so much for everything that you guys bring in comments and in the presentations today.
Natalie, can I mention one thing? So when these organizations apply for funding from us, it's usually just a small grant. I mean, it's generally seed money to get them going, to kind of fill a gap in their funding. But a piece of receiving money from us is that then they provide volunteers for the River Ramble, because it takes a lot of people to put on and host a bike ride that size. So they do commit to providing some volunteer time as a piece of receiving funding from us as well. And then they provide a report back to us on how the money was spent, who they reached. And eventually what I'd like to do is create a report for all of the organizations that receive money from us that we can then provide to BikeMN, so that they know what's happening across the state. And that, I think that would also help in their fundraising and our fundraising long-term with funders, like, because it's not just people that bike in the metro area, but across greater Minnesota. And I think this is great, but I think if we had some kind of short kind of fact sheet about this is how many people we reached, how many communities across the state, that would go a long ways to help provide more funding to our organization so we can expand what we're working on.
Very good. And as you know, as we talk about advocacy, local advocacy, opportunities to be part of the statewide advocacy piece, and I know we're just getting to back to school, but you know, it will be a day on the hill before we know it too. So as you're thinking about what local work you'd like to do, finding out who your local representatives are and what you'd like to talk to them about and ask them for come the beginning of 2024. This is not too early to start getting those wheels turning. And I'm sure Cindy would agree, this is, you know, this is a great time to get engaged.
Absolutely.
So I did see a comment here in the chat box about a webinar next week. Angela shared this about coming up to just make sure that there's that opportunity to get plugged in with BikeMN. If you are an educator and you'd like to learn more about these new rules about getting that education in the schools, it sounds like there's some opportunities here and some office hours that would be available. So definitely reach out to Angela at BikeMN.org if you want to know more about that. I want to make sure that BikeMN wants to make sure that the statewide network here is well supported as you transition through some of these new changes.
Yeah,
so.
And the link to the webinar and our office hours are all on that landing page that I shared in the chat. So they're just Zoom links you can pop in whenever is convenient for you. The webinar will also be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube page. So if you can't attend live, you'll be able to look at it later.
Very cool. Thanks, Angela. That's great information and very relevant and timely to get out to the network here. So a couple other things, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. During this monthly webinar, it always is a long list, and this isn't even all inclusive of events coming up between now and the next month's webinar for this network. But here's a few in greater Minnesota and in the Twin Cities area that are coming up between, you know, in the next month here. Lanesboro is doing a biking around Minnesota ride. There's the Red Ribbon Ride in Willow River. Giants Ridge Iron and Dirt in Biwabik. Gitchigami North Shore Ride in Two Harbors, Pine River Pedal, River Valley 100 in Mankato, Midwest Bikepacking Summit in Deerbrook, Wisconsin, so nearby, and then Northfield Rotary Bike Tour. So all of these coming up in the next month here. In the Twin Cities, Break the Cycle in North Minneapolis, St. Paul Bicycle Coalition monthly meeting. They have their meetings on here. And then the Minnesota BikeMN Adult Learn to Ride on, well, let's see here. We're on August 16th, so tomorrow. You've got the Learn to Ride piece coming up. And then Free Will Mountain Bike Races at Buck Hill, Women Trans Femme League Cycling Instructor Class, Open Streets on Cedar Avenue, Pedal Prior in Prior Lake, Minneapolis Public Bike Art Tour. The last one of the season on September 1st. And this is actually a great segue into just promoting an upcoming webinar here. We want to feature some of these wonderful photos and of the art and the folks who were participating on these bike tours. So there's still one more chance, and then we'll feature that bike tour on a future webinar so that we can show you some of the pictures and share how that went this year for 2023. So, and then September 10th, the St. Paul Classic. And as Cindy had mentioned, the Mankato River Rambles coming up on Sunday, October 8th. So lots of great opportunities to get on your bike and ride and join other folks and invite a friend and ride bikes on some of these fun rides here. So, all right, so any closing comments that you would like to make, Cindy, to the group here as we kind of wrap up the webinar today, and we'll hold a little space for Q&A if anyone else has another question for Cindy or other folks. But Cindy, did you want to give a few closing remarks?
Yeah, I would just like to really talk about, sorry, someone's at my door that I have no control over, that if you have, the Advocacy Committee is really interested in what some of the local challenges are around implementing some of these active transportation policies or infrastructure changes in the community. And so please don't hesitate to let us know, because we're working on developing our legislative platform for the next few years, and really thinking about what are the underlying causes of why some of this work is perhaps more difficult than what it really needs to be. And we want to work on addressing those. So don't hesitate to share some of those, your thoughts, all thoughts. We're not promising that everything's going to be addressed, but that helps us think more broadly and think differently about some of the challenges that are happening across the state.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy. And, you know, one of the things about, Michael spoke to this too, and Cindy did, and Mark, just about the statewide representation in the advocacy space is really important, and to have the voices be the voices of folks that are representing those different regions across the state and sharing those local concerns. Because whether it's, you know, logging in International Falls, the beat trucks in Bemidji, or the Iron Range unique concerns out in the Arrowhead region, or as we discussed today, quite a few things about Southern Minnesota, and just showcasing those things around active transportation at the summit and other local advocacy issues that need to be addressed. So your voices need to be heard, and it's great to get engaged in this work and share your voice directly in the work for advocacy across the state of Minnesota. So thank you to Mark Plotz and Cindy Winters as being speakers today, and for Michael and Angela sharing some information about BikeMN, and definitely again, welcome Michael to the BikeMN team as Executive Director. And we look forward to hearing more in September from him and others about the things that are going on at BikeMN. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day.